Awesome! If you are here, it means that you have completed the world of map and you have identified all those big problems, that were affecting your life and your relationships and work. And you also have discovered through the process that most of these problems are people related. And that's the main root cause of all the problems. And if we can solve that, then you've taken care of most of the problems in your life, and all the other trivial problems that keep coming up over and over and over again will be gone. And life can really be awesome, and relationships will be in the place where they should be, and that will be such a happy place. But it's still time for us to get there. So let's go back to where Jack and Rama are. All right. Now, what is it? Jack and Rama are journeying to be superheroes. But I hear Jack, and I hear that he's complaining. And what is he complaining about? He's complaining about his boss is brain dead, and he's just not so fair, and he's always being unfair. And he says, why can't you do this just the way I do? And he's complaining about all these things. So the question is, why is he complaining so much? And why does he feel that no, his boss doesn't understand him? So let's really look at what could be some of these causes. So there are 4 insanities that we want to deep dive into, and I'll give you a little glimpse of what these 4 insanities are. So let's start with the first one. It's fairness. So if you think that one can be fair, what do you think? Do you think that we can be fair to everybody? Yeah, I hear you. The answer is no. Because if you try to do that, you will always have somebody or the other who will come back to you and say, oh, that was so unfair. Let me give you a scenario. So let's say we've got 2 employees. You've got employee A and you've got employee B. Now, employee A is the kind who comes to work on time. He walks in at 8 a.m. He's constantly working hard. He's so detailed, submits reports, gives additional analysis. He's working long hours, and is completing work as per deadlines. And then you also have this candidate B. Now, candidate B, on the other hand, is a super charismatic guy. He walks in and he's constantly greeting people. So when he walks in at 8 a.m., everybody knows he's there, and he will start his day by first meeting and greeting everybody and checking in on how everybody's doing. And he communicates really, really well. And he also gets his work done. And, he pretty much leaves on time. But of course, if there's work that needs to be done, that takes longer, he will stay back and get it done. So now we've got a promotion that has been announced, but only one candidate can get promoted. So who do you think among the 2 is going to get promoted? Tick tock, tick tock. All right, let's make an assumption here. Let's say candidate A is the one who gets promoted. Now, do you think that's a fair decision? What do you think A is going to say? Of course he's going to think it is fair. But what about candidate B? Candidate B is going to go like, oh my God, that's such a stupid decision. It is so unfair. This guy barely talks to people. He can't make presentations. He just gets into so much detail and is constantly working with all these Excel sheets. And how can he get promoted? And why not me? So he thinks it's completely unfair. And then you've got, let's flip it for a moment, and let's say candidate B gets promoted. What do you think candidate A is going to think? Of course, to B, it's going to be a fair decision. But to A, he's going to think like it's, again, super unfair, because this guy just faps around and is constantly talking to people and doesn't really, get into the detail of things. And he just, things to slip out of all the detailed information. And he just shouldn't get promoted. Now, in both cases, it's fair to those individuals, but the other person will always think it is unfair. So the bottom line is, fairness is subjective. Yeah. And if you believe that you can be fair to everybody, then let me enlighten you that you will then eventually go insane. Because no matter how much you try, have you ever been in a situation where you have really given all the details, you've set the criterias, you've really explained the situation to people, and you've really told them as to, based on these criterias that were announced, we took this decision, you will still always have somebody who thinks it was unfair. So it is eventually impossible to have the same fairness, across to everybody. So fairness is really subjective. Now let's look at the other insanity, insanity two, which is common sense. Now, common sense, which we think it should be common, is really not so common that we hear, right? Have you heard that term? Common sense is not so common. The question is why? Why do people say that? Have you been in a situation where you've tried to explain something to somebody and you see it in a certain way, and you're explaining this to them, and they're like going, yeah, 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 I kind of get it, and they eventually go and do something completely different, and you'll go like, oh my god, what is it that they didn't get? I mean, I've been speaking in English and I don't seem to understand what is it that this person didn't get. Have you been in a situation like that? I'm sure we all have been in situations. Now the question is, why does this happen? It happens because we humans perceive information through our own filters. And these filters are genetically wired in our brains based on how it interprets information. And it triggers all these different emotions and filters that we see the world through. Now, it is purely based on the genetic makeup of our brain. Now, you may have realized that there are people who could be born in the same household, grown up in the same environment, or born in the same cities, had similar upbringings, but they think completely different because each one is thinking through their own filters that are genetically wired. So if you believe that common sense can be, um, across all people, then let me tell you that you will eventually go insane, because that is not possible. Each one will always think through their own filters. Now, the next insanity that we'll talk about is, if I can do it, so can you. Have you heard of that before? Yeah, of course. I've always heard people say, yeah, so, I can make a good cappuccino. I'm sure you can do it too. It's really easy. Now, what may be easy to one person may not be easy to the other person. And we cannot assume that, that person can really follow through and make that happen. Let's say somebody's really good with reading Excel sheets and spreadsheets, and you've got the other person who is going like, oh my God, I really don't get this. And you think it's super easy. What is it about a sheet that he doesn't get? If I can do it, so can you. And it's simply the way we process information, and the process that is happening in our brains, ambiguity relief process is really, it's trying to get clarity about what is it that that somebody's saying, and why is it that I can't process it in that way, because you're not wired to process it that way. And also, there could be other motivational factors, behind it. So, for example, let's say, the person seems to be comfortable working with, let's say, a spreadsheet, but doesn't enjoy working with it. Not because he's not competent, but simply because he's got this, aversion to working with Excel sheets. And that probably could be stemming out of an experience that he's had sometime in school with math, where maybe his math teacher really gave him a tough time and left, a really emotion that's there in his mind that he probably can't even express, and he doesn't even know that he's repelling the spreadsheet simply because of those memories that are deeply engraved in his brain. And eventually, if you think that, or if you believe that everybody can do things, the same way as you, then I can tell you one thing: you will go insane. Now, the other insanity is that the truth is universal. Now, let me just ask you for a moment, or let me show you a table. And now I'd like you to think about a table. Do you think the table that you thought of and I thought of are exactly the same? Of course not. Because you're thinking and your brain is processing the truth that is your truth. And I'm looking at it from my perspective. So, I could bet that maybe, you could have thought of, let's say, a dinner table or a coffee table or a cocktail table or even like an office table, and thought that that is a table, but maybe the table that I'm talking about could be completely different. So again, the truth is not universal, and if you believe that the truth is universal, you will eventually go insane. So these insanities that we've looked at, are really some of the root causes, or where they're stemming out of. It's really because of this foundational programming that is there in our brain, and this really can't change. So there are far more insanities than what we've discussed, but we will only talk about these four, insanities. And 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 the bit that I want you to go away with is, that people are not the same. So if you have this feeling that, my gosh, I'm surrounded with idiots, and what is it that, people don't get about what I say, then really it's about taking a pause and thinking through that people have their own filters, and they're thinking through their own filters. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in detail, when we talk about focus. Because the minute you start focusing on something, let's say you focus on the fact that this person doesn't have common sense, or this person doesn't really think like the way I do, you already have built a perception about this person, and then you will start just, losing the true potential that the person has to offer. Now we're going to deep dive into this in the next module. So look forward to see you there.